What's going on, guys? I'm back. I'm live. I'm trying something a little bit different, trying the sort of later. Not well, depending where you are, of course, it might not be late for you where you are, but over here, it's around 9:30 p.m. and I thought there's a lot going on. There's a bit of buzz about things with when it pertains to WWE. There's a little bit of buzz on social media about Monday Night Raw tonight. You know what? There should be. There should be buzz as to what's going on when it comes to WWE. After SummerSlam this weekend, which I enjoyed. I mentioned this in the videos that I did Sunday. I enjoyed SummerSlam a lot, particularly the main event. I enjoyed... this Triple H era, this Triple H regime is going to take a little bit of time, and it's going to take a little bit to really see these sweeping changes, but I enjoyed SummerSlam, and as I mentioned, there is a lot of news heading into Monday Night Raw this evening, which of course is the posted SummerSlam edition of Monday Night Raw, the second edition of Raw of the Triple H era, of Triple H being the head of creative, the executive vice president of talent relations. No Vince McMahon, of course, he has resigned, retired from the company, so there's a lot of buzz coming from WWE, particularly, again, because of how good SummerSlam was in the main event and the subtle changes and differences that you would see from a usual Vince McMahon production, if you will. So because of that and because of some of the returns we saw at SummerSlam at the weekend of the likes of Bayley, but particularly the likes of Io Shirai getting called up from NXT to the main roster and Dakota Kai returning to WWE, there's a lot of speculation on some other names that could be indeed set to return to the company or make their main roster debuts this evening on Raw. So we're going to be talking a little bit about that. I have actually already done a video. It's on the channel right now, so be sure to check that out, about two big names that could be set to return to WWE this evening. We're going to talk about it later on anyway, but what I want to start off talking about is possibly a major injury. All of this positivity surrounding WWE at the moment and all of this positivity coming out of SummerSlam, we may have to start off with a bit of a negative one, unfortunately, folks. A bit of a negative story, and the negative story is that it would appear that Becky Lynch could be dealing with somewhat of a serious injury. As you can see right there, there was quite a bit of concern for Becky Lynch after her match against Bianca Belair this weekend at SummerSlam. There was a feeling that possibly somewhere in that match she got hurt, and that has somewhat been confirmed in the last hour or so. Now, big news coming out of the weekend centered around the first match of the show at SummerSlam. And of course, when Bianca Belair successfully defended her Raw Women's Championship against Becky Lynch. This was, it was promoted certainly as a full circle moment, right? It was a full circle situation for the EST of WWE. It was a situation whereby last year she got defeated in, 26 seconds? I think they said it was 30 seconds. A year later, they opened the show and Bianca Belair gets her victory, retaining the Raw Women's Championship. And that was the situation there. That was the story they were trying to tell. But unfortunately, coming out of the match, as I mentioned, Becky Lynch may have suffered a shoulder/arm injury in the heat of the match. As can be seen in the image on your screen right now, it was a tweet on social media. Becky Lynch was seen leaving the arena with the medical team while keeping her arm close to her body. She did give a thumbs up to the crowd at the time, indicating that she was okay, but it certainly was a concern nevertheless. Now, during the match, and it was said it wasn't just after the match, it was during the match as well, it was obvious that Becky Lynch was having some kind of issues, some kind of injury issues. She was noticeably favoring her shoulder after taking a glam slam from Belair, and you can almost see how that injury would happen. You can see how that injury would happen in the way that when you get pulled up, you have to fall flat, and your arms are or shoulders are sort of locked in, and you have to sort of take it with your palms down like this, and that's sort of an awkward way for you to land, and you can easily pop out a shoulder or separate a shoulder, and it looks like that possibly is what happened to Becky Lynch. Now, at the time when Becky Lynch was leaving the arena, and as you can see with the image right there, it wasn't known whether Becky Lynch was injured or not, if she was just selling, if she was going to be sidelined due to this possible injury. Again, now that we know that this is legitimate, it could mean that Becky Lynch is written off of television because of that injury. But if anything, like, the injuries never come at a good time, make no mistake, especially with all that's going on at WWE. You could argue, given some of the names that could be returning tonight, again, we will talk about them in a second, and the names that returned at SummerSlam, they won't be too light when it comes to the women's roster, because several women returned to WWE this past weekend, including Bayley, who made her first appearance on WWE television in over a year. Of course, she suffered a knee injury prior to WWE returning to the road last year, but she also returned with the likes of NXT alumni Io Shirai, who's changed her name to Io Sky, and Dakota Kai, who, of course, Kai was released by WWE earlier this year. This is a full-blown return to the company for Kai, and this all-new women's stable of Bayley, Sky, and Kai was actually pitched quite a while ago, before Kai was even released by WWE back in April, but then WWE chairman, CEO, and head of creative Vince McMahon reportedly rejected the idea, and even when other versions of this faction were pitched, which included the likes of Kaylee Ray and Raquel Rodriguez, it was still turned down. They still said, nope, we're not going to do it. The three women, though, returned as a collective force and were immediately confronted by Raw Women's Champion Belair. This was when Lynch, seemingly turning face, stood by Belair's side, indicating that she wouldn't let the new faction run through Bianca if she had anything to say about it. But, as I mentioned, it now appears that Becky Lynch is indeed injured, because Brian Alvarez is reporting, I believe today on Wrestling Observer Radio, that Becky Lynch has suffered a separated shoulder. That is the report right now, is that Becky Lynch has suffered a separated shoulder. Again, time frames for a separated shoulder depends on the severity of it. I recall, and this is what's so wild about shoulder injuries, is because we have learned quite a lot more about them in recent years, that I remember watching WWE in the late 90s, early 2000s, and they would talk about people dislocating or separating their shoulders, and they would work the next night. Legitimately, it was a case of pop the shoulder back in, get on with it. Now we know so much more. When you dislocate a shoulder or anything like that, chances are you tear your labrum. And if you tear your labrum and you have to get surgery on a torn labrum, Adam Cole in AEW has a torn labrum right now. They are injuries you can work through, but eventually you have to get them fixed. And once you get surgery on a torn labrum or something like that, you're out 6 to 9 months. And they can be really complicated. Your shoulder joint can be incredibly complicated. So separated shoulder might be a case of a couple of weeks. Depending on the severity of it, she could be out for months. Ultimately, we don't know. And that would be a really frustrating thing for her, because, of course, she'd be thinking, oh, man, Bayley's back. You've got Io Shirai on the main roster. I don't think we've ever seen Becky Lynch versus Io Shirai, as far as I'm aware of. I can't recall that ever happening. Becky Lynch versus Dakota Kai is an exciting... There are so many interesting and exciting possibilities. Forget the fact that, again, Triple H is in charge, and he was a big spearhead of the women's evolution, the women's revolution in WWE. So the fact that she would be missing out on that, it would be incredibly frustrating for her. So here's hoping, again, the injury isn't severe or as severe as it possibly could be worried to be. I hope not, certainly, but it doesn't look great for Becky Lynch. But obviously, as I mentioned, the big news, and this is the story that we did cover, is on the channel. Be sure to check that out. Be sure to subscribe, bottom right-hand corner. The big story is these teased returns that we could see this evening from two former women's champions, two former women's tag team champions. I will give you a few seconds to avoid it if you wish, but it's a big story, and it will be everywhere if indeed it is accurate. I'll give you 5 seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And the big story, if you believe all of this, is that tonight on Monday Night Raw, we could indeed see the return of former, or I guess current, if you however you want to look at it, women's tag team champions, that being the one, the only Sasha Banks and Naomi, could be set to return to WWE if reports are to be believed. This could be what we're looking at right now, and it's a fascinating story, if indeed, again, it is accurate, because it's a story that just nobody would have predicted. Just a couple of months ago, of course, they've been absent since walking out of WWE. Now, again, where this one really all stems from is that there have been rumblings. There have been rumblings all day, not necessarily about Banks and Naomi themselves, but more so about something happening on Raw tonight, and the wording that has been used is curious to say the least. I mean, that curious doesn't even really cover it. Sean Ross Sapp of Fightful tweeted out, and this was a few hours ago now, about 3 hours ago, and he has since clarified, look, I really don't know what they mean by this, and I haven't heard anything else since then, so take this with a pinch of salt. It might just be WWE doing red flags. They have done this before to make you tune into the show and then nothing happens. I don't really understand the logic behind that, because, okay, they'll tune in tonight, but they won't tune in next week because they won't, it's the boy who cried wolf principle. So I don't think... I can't see Triple H doing it. I could have seen Vince McMahon doing red flags because he's done that before. Triple H, not so much. But Sean Ross Sapp of Fightful tweeted, quote, someone told me tonight's WWE Raw sounds like a, quote, statement show. And he put the quotes around statement. As I mentioned, he followed this up saying, I don't know what this means, but I'll let you all know when I do. Now, there was a further report by WrestlingNews.co that actually confirmed Banks and Belair's return, and he said, I haven't heard anything about this, so I'll let you know if I do hear anything. So these are very much unconfirmed reports, but it's certainly curious when they're saying statement, and this was even more curious when WWE themselves tweeted out the exact same words as that. WrestleVotes, of course, very reputable online Twitter account, has also tweeted, quote, I'm told Raw tonight looks really good as of now and is a packed show. So much so, USA Network is allowing the first hour to be commercial free if WWE wants. So they're being told big stuff's going to happen tonight. And USA Network are so excited about it because they're thinking we should do it commercial free. We can pop. It's the post-SummerSlam edition of Raw. It's this creative renaissance, hopefully, with WWE under Triple H. We could do one of the bigger numbers we've done for Raw for a long time. I think the go-home episode of Monday Night Raw did, 1.9 million viewers on average across 3 hours, which is pretty damn good going. Now, obviously, again, there were extenuating factors about all of that. One being, it was the go-home show for SummerSlam. Another being that it was inside Madison Square Garden. Another being that it involved Vince McMahon's retirement, resignation from the company. So there was a lot going on. There was a lot going on about with all of that. So again, how much you want to read into that rating, that's your prerogative. But nevertheless, WWE certainly will be looking at it and saying, you know what, actually, we can do something. We can do a good number. We can do a good rating, certainly. And commercial free, it keeps the viewers hooked in. They don't have to change the channel. That's when people change channel the most, of course, is commercial. So that is curious. So that's what they said. But then, as I mentioned, the real tease came from WWE themselves, because WWE said, quote, with SummerSlam in the rear view, who will make the biggest statement tonight on Raw? And just look at what they've said. Look at what they've said there, folks. SummerSlam in the rear view. Rear view, it's Naomi's move. That is Naomi's move. That's what Naomi does. She does the rear view. It's been a staple of her arsenal for years. However long she's been in WWE, nearly a decade, longer. She's done the rear view for years. And they also say who will make the biggest statement tonight on Raw. Rear view statement. The admin for WWE's Twitter account there knows exactly what they're doing with the words that they're using there. Now, again, could it be WWE being smart? Could it be WWE going, look, we know how to get people to tune in. We know how to get people buzzing. There's a bit of buzz about WWE anyway at the moment. How do we really keep this buzz up even more? We'll just tease something. And then when it doesn't happen, if Sasha Banks and Naomi don't return tonight, WWE's got plausible deniability. We never said they were coming back. At what point did we advertise Sasha Banks and Naomi to be returning on Raw tonight? We never did. We never advertised that. They can plausible deniability. Absolutely, they've got plausible deniability. But as I mentioned, some people, some outlets are putting, I would say their reputation, but they are going with the story that Sasha Banks and Naomi are returning. I mentioned WrestlingNews.co, which as an outlet, again, I'm not going to sit here and disrespect them. I think it's incredibly rude. But they're not, shall we say, tier one. They're not, your Fightfuls. They're not, any of those people. They're not your Wrestling Observers. They're Wrestling Observer newsletters. They're not your Andrew Zarians or anyone's like that. They're not going to be breaking exclusives, as it were. But WrestlingNews.co is reporting that an agreement has been reached for Sasha Banks and Naomi to indeed return to WWE. There is a belief backstage we may see them return on tonight's show, or in the near future under Triple H's regime. As it was reported last week, we spoke about it here on the channel. Dave Meltzer did note last week that WWE was looking to try and work things out between Sasha Banks and Naomi, and it does appear that all is now well between both sides. It's reported in this report here by WrestlingNews.co that the creative issues that Banks and Naomi had was with Vince McMahon, easy for me to say, and not Triple H. Now, one has to wonder too, with Banks and Naomi possibly returning to the company, what does this mean about the Women's Tag Team Championships? We don't know what it means for those Tag Team Championships, because I don't think there was actually ever any plan when they got stripped of those Tag Team Championships. So that is the latest as we head into Monday Night Raw tonight. Possibly a return for Sasha Banks and Naomi to the company. Again, don't be disappointed, I would say, if we don't see them, because as far as I'm aware, as far as I can see, there doesn't seem to be any big credible outlets, big credible outlets in terms of, saying that this is indeed going to happen. We haven't seen that. I'm just seeing, that's why I was stumbling there for a second, is that Sean Ross Sapp has just tweeted, hey, I don't know how else to tease this, but there have been talks of enhancing Ciampa's presentation, and the report is scheduled to come out in minutes. I think what we might do is stick live until this report comes out, because that would be a fascinating one. I saw, and look, to be honest, when it's no coincidence. Triple H suddenly has, is in charge of the book, as it were, in WWE, and suddenly Tommaso Ciampa's getting a push. I wonder who came up with that one. I wonder who's coming up with that one. Fairly obvious who's coming up with that one. But we can stick live until that Ciampa story is released. I'm just saying, we did a video as well earlier today. It's been a busy day, talking about Ric Flair's final match. I watched it. I woke up this morning, and the first thing I did was check my phone, because I wanted to see if Ric Flair was still alive. And like, I'm not even exaggerating. I wanted to make sure he was okay, because I was terrified. I mean, the people that actually watched it live, I can only sympathize with what you were going through. And because I was watching it knowing that he gets out of it okay, and it was horrifying. And I've watched it back a couple of times since, especially the closing moments of the match. He clearly says to Andrade as the match is over, he locks the figure 4 leg lock onto Jeff Jarrett, and the referee counts Jarrett's shoulders down 1, 2, 3. The finish clearly is meant to be that Flair is sitting up, because technically both their shoulders are down during that time. Again, clearly it's meant to be that he's sitting up. He is so gassed, he is so out of it, that he couldn't even sit up. And even Andrade comes up to him afterwards, and he has to wake him up. He goes up to him, and Flair, visually, you can clearly see it. And I'm not a lip reading expert, but it's clear what he says. He goes, I passed out. And Andrade's having to hold his head. And it was, as I said in the video, it was a spectacle. And I'd recommend to watch it because it was a spectacle. And I would give credit to Conrad Thompson and everyone involved in promoting the show, and I thought the production of the show was good as well for what not a WWE or AEW event. I thought they did really well in that sense, but parts of it was just, there's a 73-year-old man bleeding, and as the match is over, he doesn't look like he has a clue where he is. During the match in general, it looked like he was, in super slow motion. And I'm not criticizing him for that, because he's 73. What I am critical of is him being in the ring at that age, let alone with all of his health issues. Now, the reports come out afterwards that he's backstage and he was checked over by 2 doctors and he was fine. I did not see a man that was fine in that ring. I didn't. I did not. He looked completely gassed, worryingly so. They filled a ton of time to do that. And of course, the match has to be scheduled around his deficiencies, clearly. But it was, as I mentioned, it was just uncomfortable. And that's almost the best way that I can put it. It was uncomfortable, and it just, I mentioned sad and just very Again, I've never again. Undertaker was ringside. Don't get any ideas. Same with you, Mick Foley. Definitely not Brett. I don't think Brett does anyway. But yeah, no, not for me. But finally, yes, let's talk about this Tommaso Ciampa story that's just coming out right now. Or Ciampa. Or could it be going back to Tommaso? A former NXT champion could indeed be benefiting from the new regime in place of Triple H heading up WWE's creative. Fightful is reporting that there has been increased discussions about enhancing the presentation of Ciampa. Obviously, Ciampa and Triple H's history is well documented. Triple H was a big fan, big proponent of Ciampa, his work in NXT. Ciampa, a former NXT champion, had the biggest and best run of his career to date in NXT as the heel champion, his feud with Johnny Gargano, and it looks like Ciampa will be a beneficiary of this regime change in WWE. Among some of the things that Fightful is reporting when it comes to some of these changes is Ciampa being put in more matches that showcase his ability, as possibly as early as tonight on Raw. So don't be surprised if we see Ciampa have a multi-segment match or something like that. There have been some discussions about him regaining his NXT theme. They haven't heard if that's confirmed. That's going to be fascinating to see what happens with some of those themes, because I know the WWE and the CFOs, by all accounts, the rights or the licensing agreement they had was awful and bad, and that's why they had to change all the songs, because playing them, they lost a load of money, or they didn't make as much money, or whatever it may be. The issue is that the CFOs made some great songs. I mean, it felt like for a period of time from sort of 2015 to 2018 maybe, the CFOs, every single song they put out for every single act worked. I mean, we're talking hit after hit after hit after hit. Glorious, Tommaso Ciampa, Rebel Heart, Shinsuke Nakamura, Sami Zayn. I mean, if they came through NXT during that period of time, they had an absolute banger of a theme song, because CFOs just nailed it every single time. They just nailed it. And it was such a shame to see them change. And it's not so much about the change, it's what they were replaced with, right? Some of the theme songs they were replaced with were just rubbish. They just weren't good. I remember watching the Royal Rumble earlier this year. I did a watch along at the time. And the music would play. No one had any idea who's coming out. And then when they did come out, you go, oh, it's so-and-so. Their music sucks. It was just with the most generic SmackDown versus Raw, Creator Wrestling number 3 music. And it was not good. Nevertheless, going back to this Fightful report, Ciampa has reportedly received positive reviews from his peers and staff for his work with The Miz and his willingness to embrace the role, with his attitude backstage also being praised since he was brought to Monday Night Raw. One source is saying to Fightful that his demeanor has been, quote, great, and he's worked hard to make the most out of everything presented to him under Vince, when he didn't even originally ever plan to be on Raw or SmackDown. Of course, he said he was going to be an NXT guy for life, but that was the NXT under the Triple H regime. Once things changed to NXT 2.0, his days were numbered in there, and he had to do the run on the main roster. In addition, as you can imagine, Ciampa's promo with The Miz turned a lot of heads and impressed several people backstage. That was the promo that I spoke about the other day here on the channel. That was a 60-second promo that was just, I think, a social media promo, and it was excellent. It was fantastic. It looked like it was unscripted. He spoke from the heart, and it was awesome. It was awesome because Tommaso Ciampa's awesome. That's ultimately why. So I'm excited to see that, and I'm excited for Raw tonight. We'll have reaction videos coming up tomorrow morning for all of the big moments for Monday Night Raw, so be sure to check those out. And we could be talking about a lot of big news tomorrow, so it's going to be a really exciting time. Be sure to smash a like on the like button. We've got nearly 25 people watching. See if we can get that up to double figures. And be sure to subscribe, bottom right-hand corner. And I'll speak to you again very soon. Peace.
Hey guys, thank you for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today. Be sure to click on the video on the right there to watch our next video, or click the bottom there to subscribe, or the bottom right hand corner. Thank you very much, and I'll speak to you again very soon.